Yep.
So firstly, thank you for making yourself available today. I guess my first maybe obvious question is why it was so difficult to confirm Cbus to attend these hearings today.
Well, as we explained, there are a number of things that we are having to comply with and deal with, but clearly the issue and the announcement with ASIC, which we had only been made aware of late on Monday, made that situation important for us to be here, to be able to address the Senate and also questions that probably the broader community might have within the limits of what we can disclose.
Well, it wasn't clear to me why it needed to take so long, but I just want to ask you about the role of the board and the chair. So I know that the chair sometimes gives statements on behalf of the fund. How does his role work? How do you work with the chair?
So as CEO, I have a close working relationship, respectful working relationship. The board clearly is there to drive strategy, but also detailed oversight. And from time to time, the chair and other board directors may choose to delve deeply into some of the activities that we do, and we support that.
Right.
And likewise, where there are big decisions that we need to make around like budget, strategy, and so forth, and also in particular around the large organisational changes, I have worked closely with the chair and other key directors.
Okay, and does the chair get involved in staffing issues?
Only at the highest level, and obviously around the normal things you do around budgets and so forth. There are critical roles that report directly to the board. Obviously, mine is one. The Chief Risk Officer is another. And so that is done at an appropriate level. And under FAR, the board is required to have oversight, particularly around the executive team.
Okay, so the chair does get involved in engagement with your direct reports?
And others in the board as well.
And others. And has the chair been involved in some of the recent departures from the fund?
All decisions around that are mine.
Right.
The structure changes are mine. They are made to implement the strategy and the direction that I have identified and the board has agreed with.
Okay. So, but what sort of involvement does Mr. Swan have in staffing that? I mean, what sort of things would he be doing?
He doesn't have day-to-day involvement apart from, as I indicated, critical roles. So mine and the CRO. Obviously, the board has oversight around key things like executive rem and so forth, all the normal things you would expect.
Okay, so he hasn't been involved in any departures in recent months?
No.
Okay. I want to take you to what I think is a bit of an unusual public statement by the chair, Mr. Swan, where he has committed $500 million of Cbus's money to co-invest with the Housing Australia Future Fund, and he made this statement back on 28 November 2022. So why did he make that statement?
Well, I think we've got to draw the distinction between what's reported and the statement itself.
Okay, so you're not committing $500 million?
We have $500 million within our strategy that's available for these things. It was made clear, even in the report, that this would be subject to it meeting all our normal and appropriate due diligence requirements. The decisions on those things are done within the team, but the team advised the chair that this was activities that sort of met within the remit that's been delegated, and it was certainly activities that the team had been actively and continues to actively explore.
Okay, so the $500 million is still there for the Housing Australia Future Fund?
So to be clear, it's around investment that is activated by the Housing Australia Future Fund policies.
Right.
We, along with others, have worked up a sub-debt opportunity that we have taken directly to CHPs. So we do not interact specifically with the Housing Australia Future Fund, but it would be dependent on those CHPs getting some underlying Housing Australia Future Fund support to support the revenue stream.
Okay, so
That's the nature of it.
Go on.
So that's the nature of the interactions. It's not, we don't take money from HAF. In any interactions we've had with HAF and NIFIC in its previous form have been as a potential investor in the ecosystem, explaining the parameters that we would have to see, because we have to make decisions in the financial interests of our members.
That. So my question is then, why did Mr. Wayne Swan announce this, not the CIO, because he's not the CIO of the fund?
Well, I presume it's because that was, the opportunity was with him. Where different people announce different things at different times. So,
and did he talk to Dr. Chalmers, the treasurer, about that announcement before it was made?
I'm not aware of any conversations. I wasn't involved directly in that interaction.
You weren't involved, so you don't know about that?
No.
So the money was committed without you knowing?
Well, as I said, it wasn't a commitment. So we have availability.
He said that the fund would commit $500 million.
Subject to meeting requirements, and we have that capacity over 5 years. Right? And remember, when you deploy money comes back.
Are there other occasions where other members of the board or the chair commit money on behalf of the fund, not the CIO?
Well, it's alongside the strategy that has been agreed, and again, it was all subject to finding opportunities that meet our requirements. And I think, as a growing fund, one of the things that we can derive a lot of benefit from is getting early access to opportunities where we have the capacity to shape. It means that we don't have to rely on expensive third parties to bring those opportunities for us. And so for us, it's important to tell the market in the same way that we do with other things like underwriting and long-term investing in equities, that we are here to receive and assess. And so this is consistent with, I think, a reasonable approach.
I think it is extraordinary for you to say you weren't involved in that interaction in committing a large amount of money that belongs to your members to a government scheme that hasn't even been fully developed yet.
So as I have stated previously, we had the money available. It was subject to the right opportunities. So it wasn't a commitment. It was an availability.
Media release says commit. Your media release says commit.
Yeah, but it's consistent with our strategy that if the right opportunities and metrics are there, we would pursue it. And just to be clear, it makes a lot of sense in a diversified credit portfolio to have access to different types of credit risks. This type of credit risk has some attractions because in a downturn in an economy, it's actually more likely to hold up compared to traditional credit. So there's very valid reasons why we would want to do our best to explore finding an opportunity like this. It also happens to support supply, and I think that's an important additional outcome. But from an investment perspective, it is clearly aligned and actually quite additive to our strategy.
Okay, so I want to ask you about these letters that you gave the Treasurer in relation to stamp duty exemptions.
Yep.
Do you know about these?
I'm aware of a submission that we made around the issue of RG 97 report.
Okay. So effectively, this was subject of a Senate order for production of documents. There was also freedom of information. We wanted to know what you were talking to the Treasurer's office or the Treasurer about. The Information Commissioner, I believe, asked you for your views, and were you happy for that information to be released, or did you try and protect that information?
Well, I'm happy to talk about the issue because it's a very important issue.
I'm trying to understand why you felt the need to undertake this sort of secret lobbying.
Well, so I wouldn't call it, the issue is actually a really valid issue, and let me explain why. We have RG97 is designed to create a framework where prospective investors in a product can make true comparisons in costs. The issue that has been identified by us and many others is that if you invest directly in property, we have to include stamp duty, which is a tax, as a cost. It's very lumpy and it's upfront. Whereas in the same investment, in a REIT, stamp duty is still incurred, but it does not get disclosed. So it undermines the original purpose of trying to create an even playing field for investors to compete.
I understand the substance of the issue, Mr. Falk. I'm wondering why you told the Information Commissioner that you didn't want this information to be released.
Well, that is a matter with the government as well. So, from my perspective, what we are stating, we are happy to talk about.
So, do you know that the Treasurer, Dr. Chalmers, filed a public interest immunity claim to stop this information coming out?
Oh, look, I don't follow that detail.
You don't know about that?
I'm aware of it from your media. That's where I'm aware of it.
Okay, well, I might just briefly run you through it then. So basically, there was an order of the Senate to disclose these documents. They contain information you'd given the Treasurer about changes to RG97 around fee disclosure. You and the Treasurer sought to protect those from public view. I'm just trying to work out why you didn't want the public to know about your engagement with the Treasurer's office.
Well, clearly it's being politicised, but the issue itself,
what do you mean? This is about transparency.
So let me explain how complicated it was to actually get this issue on the table, right? We went to the regulator who reports on it to articulate the issue. They said it's not our jurisdiction. They then said that we had to go to the government to change it.
Right, okay. So you go to the government?
So then we go to the government and we have to also put in a submission. So this is a very important issue that has still not seen the light of day in terms of, making a proper comparable space for members to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
And yet we're still not able to get the attention in terms of a genuine issue that, if not addressed, is misleading our members.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, Mr. Fox. So did the Treasurer consult you before he made the public interest immunity claim?
I wasn't consulted.
Was Cbus consulted?
I don't know. I would need to check.
Well, the Treasurer said that it was commercial in confidence to Cbus.
I can't answer that question now, so I'd have to check.
Well, will you take it on notice?
I'm happy to take it on notice.
Okay, because I think, did you speak to Mr. Swan about that issue?
No.
Okay, well, let's move on. I wanted to ask you about the position of Cbus in relation to the Housing Australia Advisory Panel.
Yep.
We discovered through FOI that Cbus was invited to appear as part of that advisory group. So who went to those meetings?
So the individual was our head of debt, Linda Cunningham, who has vast experience and expertise in this space. And she participated in consultations back in the day with NIFIC when, under the coalition government, when they were formulating the bond aggregator model. That's a very successful model.
Okay.
And it has lowered the cost of finance for CHPs. It's been modelled off overseas in the UK. We are very proud to lend our expertise to any initiative where they want to understand how we might respond to a financial structure.
How much was Cbus paid to appear as part of that committee?
It was paid to compensate, and I think it was around $7,800, which went straight to our members because it was basically compensating, probably didn't really compensate for the time that Linda spent. And it's my understanding all other members, as per government policy, was paid. Those members include people from the broad range of
$7,800. Okay, thank you very much. In terms of the overlay with the CFMEU, so the CFMEU currently owns 21% of the fund, doesn't it?
I believe that that's the case, yes.
Okay, and so the fund is the fund is owned by an organisation in part which is now in administration, right?
Sorry, the trustee company,
yeah,
that oversees the fund, has CFMEU, which is 3 of the shareholders as a owner, along with other unions and the NBA.
Okay. And is Jason O'Mara, Paddy Crumlin and Lucy Webber still members of the Cbus board?
The board is considering their nominations and that consideration has not been completed, and so I'm not in a position to provide anything further than that until the board has reviewed those nominations.
And do you believe these people are fit and proper persons to be trustees of superannuation boards?
Well, that is a matter of judgment for the board, and that's something for them to assess. There has been detailed due diligence to support that decision for the board, but I'm not going to preempt the board's judgment on that.
Okay. So why does Cbus give so much money to the CFMEU? Because, I mean, as far as I can see, in the last few years since Mr Swan has been the chair, the Cbus fund has made a total of $5,847,000 to the CFMEU. So why do you give so much money to this union, which has now been put into administration by the Parliament?
So to be clear, these are not gifts. They're not donations. They're separated into a couple of categories. One category is the payment for the directors that they put on the board, because those directors use CFMEU type, where they're CFMEU members. The larger amount is based on our partnerships program. I'm not going to go into too much detail around those aspects because that is subject to the independent investigation. But what I will say is that there is a huge benefit and a strong reason for us to reach out to people in the construction industry around the issues that are relevant in terms of our differentiated products. And this is particularly so given stapling and also the dangerous occupation aspects of insurance, to make those members aware. We also work very constructively with them, with our coordinators on the ground, to recover unpaid super. Last year alone, we recovered $200 million, which is the equivalent. Right, we have about $4 billion in superannuation coming in. That's like 0.5% of SG that would otherwise have been lost.
I do appreciate you've got a lot of good information to tell the committee, but I am trying to zero in on whether it is going to be something that you'll be doing in the future. Will you be paying the CFMEU millions of dollars a year in the future, like you have in the past?
We will. We are subject to this independent review. Once we get those findings, we will look at the circumstance in light of those findings. So I'm not in a position to say yes or no. What I can say that we do believe there is incredible value with that relationship.
But how are you going to give money if you're going to give another $5 or $6 million to a union that no longer exists?
The union does exist. I mean, that's why they are able to nominate directors.
It's been put into administration, Mr Fock.
But the union still exists. There's an administrator in charge of key aspects of that construction division.
Cbus is going to keep them afloat, is it?
Well, Cbus will make commercial arrangements that we believe are in the best financial interests. We will take into account any findings that come from the independent review, but we will make commercial decisions across any partnership activity. And if
you obviously think there's value in
if that continues to be a value driver, then we would expect that it would be something that we would continue to pursue. But I'm not going to speculate on what we will and won't do until the information is received and the board has been able to digest it.
Well, fair enough. Look, just finally, before I hand to the Deputy Chair, I just want to ask you about these insurance issues. So,
yes,
I mean, effectively, there are cases where people have had situations where they are in their worst possible time of their life. Widows have tried to claim TPD insurance, death insurance, I should say, and they've not been able to get access to a payment despite having had years of premiums going to Cbus. So I guess I'm wondering why it is that Cbus has not been able to look after people in their hour of need, particularly given your stated commitment to trying to do the right thing.
So to be clear, we have experienced delays that are unacceptable, but we're not withholding money. We stand no benefit, absolutely none at all. The delays, as I indicated, have primarily emanated from our administrator. We are still responsible for it. We need to ensure as best as we can that we can rectify it, and we have been doing that. We had experience with the administrator, a large amount of turnover in staff, a need to uplift on training. There's been quite a lot of actions that we've had to instigate. Though sometimes those things take longer than anyone would like. And we continue to find ways and seek ways to prevent this happening again. As I indicated before, our insurance policies, because they do cover situations that many funds don't, so dangerous occupations, heights and so forth, are more likely to pay out. Most funds pay out on average about 10% less. And I think if you heard in the Royal Commission, the payout ratios even at 80% are high. And so we do understand it's an important service, and we know that as an organisation we have let them down and we need to do better.
I think that's right. So if you get a regulatory fine, will the trustee company owners pay the fine, or will the members pay the fine? So, for example, will the CFMEU pay the fine, given you're still paying them, or will it be the members of the fund that pay the fine?
Look, I'm not going to speculate on that. And, as you know, speculation on that before we've even had the ability to look at the full detailed information, I don't think is going to be helpful.
So just before we go, I just wanted to circle back and just check one thing with you. In relation to your answers before about the interaction between Mr. Swan and the announcement of $500 million for the housing fund, do you know whether Mr. Swan discussed this with Dr. Chalmers before it was announced?
I'm not aware of that. I wasn't privy to that conversation.
Okay. And do you know whether Mr. Swan discussed the changes you sought to Regulatory Guide 97 with Dr. Chalmers?
I'm not aware of any conversations between Mr. Swan or any of the Labor Party.
Okay, so maybe we should ask.
Questions are purely with him as the chair, so I don't get any understanding or visibility on any activities he might do in other capacities.
So they sound quite material to the operation of your fund, but I'll leave it as a comment. So we might have to ask Mr. Swan these questions then. Well, we thank you very much for your time today. We won't ask you to take those on notice. We'll ask those perhaps another time to Mr. Swan. And you go with our best wishes.
Thank you, and I will continue to make myself available to the committee. I understand the interest in our activities, so I'll make that commitment to you.
No, thank you very much.